Too many mistakes, too many issues with ball security through 3 interceptions in this football game. And that stigma that was there with Matt Corral this year is kind of materialized with Malik Willis now. Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino of the Draft Network, and we just got the treat that seems to come once a year, and it is one of the big-time showcases in NFL draft realm when 2 top-level quarterbacks take the field and show their skills against one another, which we saw this past weekend with Ole Miss's Matt Corral and Liberty's Malik Willis. TDN had some boots on the ground for this contest, and now with the aftermath and the dust settling, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened and what it means for each one of these players. So, Joe, what's the most prominent storyline in your mind coming off of Ole Miss Liberty, the battle for QB1 with Matt Corral and Malik Willis?
I think the most prominent storyline should be the quarterback that went out there and led their team to a football win. And that was Matt Corral, who I thought did what he should do. And we have to keep in mind that he was battling a ankle injury in this football game. He was out without his number 1 receiver. A couple of his other top guys, they were banged up for this football game, and he still went out and was very efficient. 20 of 27, 324 yards, had a touchdown pass. And I thought he played an efficient football game where you still saw some of those Matt Corral things that you really like in terms of creativity as a playmaker, throws down the field, really good touch on a lot of his passes. And I thought for Matt Corral, he did what he was supposed to do in this football game. And I think that we can't lose track of that as we kind of build on the other things that happened in this football game, which really was about the Liberty football team and how they struggled against Ole Miss.
I think one of the things that's really going to help Matt with his evaluation this year versus what we thought and knew about Matt last year was, he's not trying to do too much this year. And that's when the interceptions came in 2020, they came in bunches, and they came 4 in one game, 5 in another game. And I think he only has 2 interceptions on the season at this point in time. So the ball security is at a much higher clip, and it would have been very easy to come out here and not have one of your top targets. And you got a guy on the other side who, it's a big NFL prospect showcase game. And you think about what happened last year with Trey Lance when he got a chance to play 1 football game, right? And all the scouts came into town, and Trey really got amped up for that football game. And by the time he settled into the game, it was already the second half, and there were some poor judgments that were made. We didn't see that in this big showcase game for Matt Corral. And that's the part for me that, I'm really excited about, because that was the one black cloud as far as the decision-making process that he had on the football field last year. He's obviously played against some really high-profile programs, had success as a passer against Alabama, a bunch of shootout victories this season. Well, now it's the next level's got eyes on, and I'm going to keep playing my game. I'm not going to try to do too much. I'm going to take care of the football. And lo and behold, that results in a 13-point home win. And as you said, just going out and taking care of business and treating it like just another day.
And that's not easy to do, right? You can definitely understand him wanting to go out there and really dial up some big time throws and do not dynamic things on the field. But I love the efficiency that came from Matt Corral in this game, and didn't feel like he needed to do more, which is something that a lot of quarterbacks fall victim to, both in the NFL and in college football.
So then on the other side of the coin, you have Malik Willis, who, we're fans of here at TDN, and we're really excited about his potential as a player. And we think he's firmly in the conversation for QB1. But this showcase against Ole Miss, they fell behind early. Malik had to end up scratching and clawing to get the team back into the game where it was at least a compelling game in the fourth quarter. But too many mistakes, too many issues with ball security through 3 interceptions in this football game. And that stigma that was there with Matt Corral this year is kind of materialized with Malik Willis now. When you see 3 of the last 5 games, he's had 3 interceptions where they're starting to come in bunches a little bit. And there's no question Liberty was outgunned in this football game, but we've seen a number of quarterbacks come from smaller competition and play up and punch up and try to compete. And this isn't necessarily something that should have caught anybody off guard, that Malik tried the best he could to make the best of a situation in which Liberty was very clearly out.
Yeah, it's a tough assignment for him. We saw Jordan Love struggle with LSU. We saw Josh Allen struggle with Nebraska and Iowa. And so this is just that next chapter in the story of small school quarterbacks getting a big showcase opportunity against a Power 5 team and not being able to overcome the massive talent discrepancy. And that where that really shows up is in the trenches. And in this game, Malik Willis was sacked 9 times. I mean, that's a ton of pressure, and that's a lot to deal with. And obviously, I don't think his trigger was especially fast. I mean, he held onto the football for a fair amount of time, trying to make things happen. And he found a way to keep it somewhat close at the end, but for the most part, it wasn't a fair fight. And I think we have to keep that in mind when we consider how Malik Willis fared in this football game and have the right expectation. That way we don't overreact. And I don't think from the perspective of what you thought Malik Willis was before this game versus what he is after the game, I'm not sure that anything happened against Ole Miss that should really move you off of any of those opinions. This just wasn't a fair fight. And I think that Malik Willis fell victim to that.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember here with this contest in particular. And Malik Willis in general is his projection is projection. Nobody's going to sit here and tell you that Malik Willis is a pro-ready, day one, going to be a plus starter who's going to challenge the passing records. Going back to last year, you could tell he was very raw. But when you're trying to project quarterbacks to the next level, those guys that have those immeasurable tools right now are the ones who have the best conversion rate of becoming successful, dynamic players. And the environment that Malik goes to is going to have a lot to say about what kind of quarterback he ends up becoming at the next level. The range of outcomes for him is very wide. It can be very, very high, but the floor right now, if you took and transplanted him from Liberty and put him into an NFL offense, you'd probably be wise to allow him time to mature, grow, and develop. And I think this is just a really good embodiment of that, was seeing when everything else around you is going wrong, how well are you able to stem the tide and raise the ships of everybody else around you? And for Malik, at least this past weekend against Ole Miss, as you said, that proved to those scales were tilted way too far in the other direction.
Yeah, and he still does represent a really exciting football player, and the playmaking ability with his athleticism and his arm talent. He has it. And like you said, I mean, in terms of physical gifts, there's not anything he's not capable of doing on the football field. And so if you feel like you can build the right scheme and offense around him to allow those dynamic playmaking skills and those traits to show up, he gives you a really good chance to be your answer at franchise quarterback. And so it's just like with every quarterback, the scenario and environment is going to matter. And just like we talked about for the results of the game against Ole Miss, it's about having the right expectation. And so you factor that all together, and I still think that you have a really intriguing quarterback prospect in Malik Willis that can really do a lot of things that can make an NFL offense difficult to defend.
Oh, the expectation is the Draft Network is going to have a whole lot of great content in the months to come for your college football, NFL, and NFL draft needs. So make sure you visit thedraftnetwork.com and stay tuned in, because it's always draft season and we are just getting started in the build up to the 2022 NFL draft. Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino, thanks for watching.